Hello, in this video we're going to talk about verb forms, logical connectors, and active and passive voice for the iTEP preparation grammar. So first of all, verb forms. So they are one of the most common questions in the grammar section. Whether you have to choose the correct verb form in the multiple choice or to choose the incorrect part of the sentence. Usually it's the verb form. And in each sentence, in order to know which verb form we have to use, we can use like time expressions can help us. So time expressions are like now, since 1996, last summer, next year. So here we have a chart of different verb, like different time expressions here. Time expressions and which verb tense we have to use for them. So for habitual, which means happening regularly, we have every day, sometimes every week, every 2 months, every 2 days, on Fridays in the winter, every year. So for those types of time expressions, we would use the simple present tense. And if we remember, it would be like drive, drives, study, studies, visit, visits. So for he, she, it, we have to add the S at the end, only for he, she, it. And here we have an example. She goes to parties. It could be she goes to parties every day. She goes to parties sometimes. She goes to parties on Fridays. Yeah. Then for the specific past, we have yesterday, last week, 3 years ago, last year, in 1999, on Thursday. So when it's something like specific in the past, a specific time in the past, we use the simple past. And remember then the simple past, there were regular and irregular. So drive turned to drove in the simple past, so that one was irregular, but studied and visited are regular. Yeah, so this is the simple past, and our example is she went to a party last week. So we have last week, we use simple past. Then for non-specific past, like since 2005 or for 20 years, in that one of for 20 years, we know that like the period of time, but we don't know like when it started and when it finished. So it's non-specific. And we use the present perfect, which is has, have, driven, has, have, studied, has, have, visited. So has or have with the past participle, has for he, she, it. And the example is, she has gone to various parties since 2005. She has gone to various parties for 2 years. And as for things that are happening now, the time expressions can be now, right now, currently, at this time. And we use present continuous or present progressive. It's the same thing. The one with am, is, are, and the ing. I am, he, she, it is, and then the other ones with are. We are, you are, they are. So driving, studying, and visiting. So the example would be, she is going to a party, or she is leaving right now to go to the party. So yeah, so first, yeah, let's just remember that simple present, habitual, simple past, specific past, present perfect, non-specific past, and present continuous or progressive, happening now. Now, something else that we need to check is if something is plural or singular. So here we have a sentence that says, the parents, their children to the doctor every week. Taking, take is taking, takes. So every week, that's a time expression. Which one do we use? Every, yeah, every is here. So it's habitual, we use simple present. Simple present, no, no. So the parents, take or takes. Those both are in simple present. But what can we replace parents with? The parents, what can we replace parents with? Of he, she, it would be the parents, they. So they take or takes. They take their children to the doctor every week. So the parents take their children to the doctor every week. Then we have Alex and his wife has gone to Japan twice in the past 5 years. So what part of that sentence is incorrect? So it says Alex and his wife. So that would be they. They has gone. They have gone. It would be they have gone to Japan twice in the past 5 years. Because they goes with have. And then the next one says the children, as well as their teacher, wants to have more vacation time. So which one is incorrect? Children, wants, or have? Yeah, it would be wants, because when we have something in between two commas, it means it's extra information and we can delete it. It doesn't matter, and the sentence still has to make sense. So if we delete it, it says the children wants, but children would also be they, and they're they. So it would be the children want to have more vacation time. The children want. So yeah, this one would be the incorrect one. Those are the answers. So now we finished with verb forms, so we're going on to logical connectors. So connectors, like the name says, connect two parts of a sentence. And sentences can have different relationships like time, cause and effect, opposition, and condition. So here we have a chart of some connectors. So for time, and they are adverb clause connectors. We have until, after, before, when, while, since, once, whenever, as long as, by the time. And for conjunctions, we have and, then. Prepositions during, after, before, since, until, upon. Time, sentence expressions, then, next, after that, following that, before that, afterwards, meanwhile, beforehand. Now for cause and effect, adverb clause connectors, because, as, since, now that, as long as, so that, in order that. Cause and effect, conjunctions. So, cause and effect, prepositions, because of, due to. Cause and effect, sentence expressions, therefore, consequently. Oppositional, adverb clause connectors, even though, although, though, while, whereas, where. Oppositional, conjunctions, but yet. Oppositional prepositions, despite, in spite of. Oppositional sentence expressions, however, nonetheless, nevertheless, on the other hand, in contrast, on the contrary. And for conditional, adverb clause connectors, if, unless, even if, provided that, providing that, in case, whether or not, only if. And for conditional conjunctions, or else. And for conditional sentence expressions, we have otherwise. So this is how we divide them into their relationship with the sentences: time, cause and effect, oppositional, and conditional. And these are like the type of connectors they are: adverb clause, conjunctions, prepositions, and sentence expressions. So just keep this in mind. Now here we have some examples. The team lost the match because some of the players didn't arrive, and many of the members didn't arrive to the match. Therefore, the team lost. So we have here because, a connector, and therefore. What type of connector are there? Like time, maybe condition. Which one is it? So let's check here. Because, therefore. Because, cause and effect, adverb clause. And therefore, cause and effect, sentence expression. Now for the next examples. Even though many of the players weren't sick, even though many of the players were sick, the team still won the game, and despite the terrible sickness they had gotten, the team won the game. So even though and despite. Where is it? Even though and despite. So even though oppositional adverb clause connectors and despite oppositional preposition. The other examples, if the team doesn't continue to practice, they won't win the next match, and the team needs to continue to practice. Otherwise, they won't win the next match. So if and otherwise. If and otherwise. If, conditional adverb clause connector, and otherwise, conditional sentence expression. And the last one, the last example say, after the team won the game, they went out to celebrate, and the team won the game. Then they went out to celebrate. So after and then, which one is it? So here we have after, time, adverb clause connector, and what was it? It was then. So then is a time sentence expression, then. So if we can see, with the different connectors, we construct different sentences. So each of them are used in a different way. For example, when we have a sentence expression, we have, in the other ones, we have one sentence, but when we have sentence expressions, we have to cut the sentence into two parts. And then we have a comma right here after the connector. Yes. Also here, even though many of the players were sick, despite the terrible sickness. So here we have a clause, like a subject and a verb. And here we only have an object. So we'll see that a little bit in more detail right now. So yeah, each of them has like their own way of being used. So for logical connectors, sometimes there are complex sentences. Complex sentences mean that there's one main clause and one subordinating clause. And a clause is a subject plus a verb. So here we have an example of a sentence. I will get lost if I go by myself. So the main sentence is I will get lost. If we erase this, it makes sense. I will get lost. But if we say just like we're quiet and then we say, if I go by myself, does that make sense? No, that doesn't make sense. So this one is like the independent or main clause, and this one is like dependent on this one. So this one is the subordinating clause. And when we have those types of complex sentences, so with the adverb, what was it? With the adverb clause connectors, when we have here the adverb clause connector, we can invert them. When we have adverb clause connectors, we can invert them like this. If I go by myself, comma, I will get lost. When we invert it, we need a comma before the main part of the sentence. And when it's like normal, first main clause, then subordinating clause, we don't add a comma. Only when subordinating is first. Then we add a comma and then the main one. So here we have some sentences and we have to figure out what happened first. So the students went out to lunch before they finished their project. So this is also a complex sentence, and we can invert it to before they finished their project, the students went out to lunch. So what happened first? The students went out to lunch or they finished their project? So here it says before, so it would be the students went out to lunch. So first they went out to lunch, then they finished the project. The second part of sentences says the students finished their homework after the teacher had left. And since it's a complex sentence, we can also have after the teacher had left, the students finished their homework. Here, this one is the adverb clause connector, and this one is the adverb clause connector. So what happened first? The students finished their work or the teacher left? So the teacher left first. So the teacher left, and then afterwards, the students finished their homework. So this can help us to know sort of like what connector we need to use if we think about what happened first in sentences. So sometimes we need to use a comma, like before fanboys. So fanboys are for, and, nor, ba, or yet so. And they can't start a sentence. So all of these are conjunctions. Let's go back to the chart. Here, conjunctions. These conjunctions, they can't start the sentence. So you can't invert. You can't invert the conjunctions. Just to keep that in mind when answering the questions in the iTEP. Where is it? Yep, here. So if something starts with these ones, like but, blah, 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 then it can't, like, it's probably wrong. Then number 2, when the subordinating clause is before the main clause. So like we said, in a complex sentence, we start with when we start with the subordinating clause, we need a comma before the main clause. So this one is for when we have prepositions or adverb clause connectors. So not conjunctions, only prepositions and adverb clause connectors. Now for prepositions. Prepositions go with an object. Here, because of the hurricane, people evacuated. So the preposition is because of, and the object is the hurricane. So we didn't have like a clause. We didn't have subject and verb. With prepositions, we only need an object, like a noun. Because of the hurricane, comma, people evacuated. And like we said, when we have sentence expressions, we create 2 sentences. So the team needs to continue to practice. Otherwise, they won't win the match. If we use like other ones, like adverb clause connectors or preposition, then we have only 1 sentence. But when we use sentence expressions, the sentence is like cut and creates 2 sentences with a comma after the connector. Otherwise, comma, they won't win the game or the match. So now we have like an exercise. It says, so they bought their house. They had no place to live. Which part of that sentence is incorrect? So, bought, they, too. Which one is incorrect? So the incorrect one would be so. Why is it incorrect? So they bought their house, they had no place to live. Well, first of all, we said that like conjunctions can't start sentences. So that's why it's correct. If it's incorrect. If it were they had no place to live, comma, so they bought their house, that would be correct, but we can't have it here. So we would need another connector. What other connector? So maybe we can think, what happened first? Maybe that could be it. So before they bought their house, they had no place to live. That would be the connector that we use. Now for despite, in spite of, versus even though, although, though. So many people confuse despite and in spite of with these ones, even though, although, though, like how to use them. So we just have to remember that despite and in spite of, in the chart as we saw, they were prepositions. And with prepositions, we use an object or a noun, like just an object. But when we have these ones are adverb clause connectors, even though, although, though. So with these ones, we have to use a clause like a subject and a verb. So that would be like the main difference. Here we have, despite the students' bad grades, this is only the object. The teacher didn't get angry. And we can invert it. The teacher didn't get angry despite the students' bad grades. And then, even though the students didn't get good grades, so even though, then subject and verb, comma, the teacher didn't get angry, and we can invert it. The teacher didn't get angry even though the students didn't get good grades. So yeah, remember we can invert adverb clause and prepositions, and that prepositions need to use an object, while adverb clause connectors have to use a subject and a verb. So here we have it. So we don't remember despite or in spite of, and then you add an object. And even though, although, though, we add a subject and then a verb. Other people also don't know when to use during or while, and it's the same thing. During is a preposition, so we have to use an object. During the test, she got a headache. The test is the object. But while is an adverb clause connector. So when we have adverb clause connectors, we need a subject and a verb after it. So while she was taking the test, she got a headache. This one, like we said, we can invert it. She got a headache during the test, and she got a headache while she was taking the test. So yep. Prepositions, we use an object. Adverb clause connectors, we have to use a subject and a verb after them. Now for active versus passive voice verbs. In order to know if something is an active or passive voice, we have to ask ourselves, who or what is doing the action? So in active voice, the focus of the sentence is on who does the action. So they ran the race. They is the subject, and we know that they ran the race. But for passive voice, it focuses on the action. We might not even know who did the action, or the person who did the action is not important. So this would be the passive form of that sentence. They ran the race. Active. Passive voice, the race was run by them. The race was run by them. So in passive voice, we also many times we have by, but since them is not important, like we don't really know who they are, we can also like erase it. If it's not very important, we can erase it and just say the race was run. And that's it. And then we don't even mention who did the action. So there we have it. Active, focus on the person. Passive, focus on the action. Here we have a chart of how to make each of the tenses from active voice to passive voice. So if it's simple present, we have the example writes, And in passive voice, it's are, is, or am written. Then present continuous, active voice, am, is, are writing. Passive voice, am, is, are being written. Simple past, wrote. Passive voice, was, were written. Past continuous, was, were writing. And then passive voice, was, were being written. Present perfect, active voice, has, have written. And passive voice, has, have been written. Past perfect, had written. Passive voice, had been written. Active voice will write for the future, and then passive voice will be written. Active voice conditional would write, passive voice would be written. Then perfect conditional would be written, passive voice would have been written. Present infinitive, to write. Passive voice, to be written. Perfect infinitive, to have written, and then passive voice, to have been written. Present participle or gerund, writing, being written. And active voice. For perfect participle, having written, and for passive voice, having been written. So there we have all tenses and the active voice and passive voice, like an example of them, of how you have to change them to be passive voice. So here we have, as we can see, we have something in the beginning, right? Compared to this one, like one more thing. So here we have the sculpture was and demolished. So who did the action? Do we know who did the action? No. So this would be active or passive voice. It would be passive voice because it doesn't mention who did the action. The thing, this is what, like the thing to which they did the action. And this is the action, but it doesn't say who. So this is passive voice. And which option do you think it is? So passive voice, which one is it? Taking, took, taken, takes. So it would be the sculpture was taken and demolished. The sculpture was taken and demolished. Which tense is this? Was taken. So here we have simple past and passive voice. So now I have 4 exercises here about the things we saw in the video. So I want you to just read them and choose the best answer for the 4 of them, and then we'll check them together. Okay, so now let's check the answers. So the first exercise says, right now I pop music. It's my favorite. So it says, right now. That's a time expression. And with right now, we have to use the present continuous. So it would be, which one's present continuous? Yeah, it's this one. Right now, I am listening to pop music. It's my favorite. Now for number 2, it says, it's raining. The family won't be able to go to the beach. So we have during, before, as long as, upon. It would be, yeah, that one's I'm listening, and this one would be as long as. As long as it's raining, the family won't be able to go to the beach. So that's the relationship that it has with the other sentence. It's a condition. As long as it's raining, the family won't be able to go to the beach. Then number 3, she is going to save up money. She wants to buy a car. During, after, whereas, as, it would be, she is going to save up money as she wants to buy a car. So like because it's the same as. She's going to save money as she wants to buy a car. That's the relationship that the 2 sentences have. What was it? Cause and effect. Yep. And the last one, the movie, by customers every day. Was renting, is rented, is renting, renting. So here we have by customers. These are the people who do the action. So this is passive voice. And which one is a correct use of passive voice? So the movie. And it says also every day. So when it's every day, it has to be simple present. So which one is simple present for passive voice? Simple present passive voice would be is rented. The movie is rented by customers every day. So as you can see, we use the process of elimination. So first, which one is not passive voice? So this one's not passive voice. And yeah, then we saw that I don't think this one's passive voice either. Then we saw every day, so that would be simple present, and we got the right answer. The movie is rented by customers every day. So yeah, so that would be everything from me. And for this video, I hope that it was clear and helpful for you and not confusing. I hope so. And yeah, that would be everything. Bye.